Welcome back to Arise Prime Time, where we offer perspectives on the news and talking points of the day. I'm Charles Aniagolu. Now, this week in Nigeria, from politics to security, the big picture is as complex as it is consequential, with signals everywhere suggesting that the road to 2027 is already taking shape. Rita Osakwe sets the scene for the week that was.
This week, Nigeria confronts politics, power, and rising insecurity all at once. The Electoral Commission (INEC) has rescheduled the 2027 presidential election to January the 16th, with governorship polls on February the 6th, triggering concerns about timing and stirring debates about readiness and trust. In Bauchi, Governor Bala Mohammed warns that over 10,000 bandits have flooded the state, launching massive attacks and underscoring a worsening security crisis. Meanwhile, at the top of the police force, a sudden leadership shakeup. Kayode Egbetokun exits, and Tunji Disu steps in as the Inspector General, raising urgent questions about direction and control. And from the ranks of the opposition, former Kaduna Governor Nasir El-Rufai is suing the anti-corruption agency, the ICPC, for 1 billion naira, while in Edo State, an attack on Peter Obi, John Odige Oyegun, and other ADC leaders raises fresh fears over political violence. There's also a key legal twist in the opposition as a court affirms the PDP's Ibadan Convention and the party's leadership under Kabiru Turaki, potentially reshaping opposition politics. And beyond Nigeria's borders, pressure is mounting after the US Congress raised fresh concerns over violence and religious freedom, claims the Tinubu administration strongly rejects. These are some of the big developments in the week that was. Rita Osakwe, Arise News.
Well, thank you, Rita. And to help us assess the week that was, I'm joined now in the studio by the international multimedia journalist and former BBC correspondent, Donu Kogbara, who currently has a column in Vanguard newspaper, is the star of a YouTube channel called Donu's World, co-presents a podcast called Africa Here and Now, and writes for the Europe-based magazine Africa Report, and also by the Arise news analyst and former chairman of the editorial board of Daily Trust newspaper, Mahmud Jega. Lady and gentlemen, thank you very much indeed for joining us. And let me come to you first, Mahmud. The Electoral Commission, INEC, says the new 2027 election dates are about better planning, but critics like the ADC see room for manipulation. What do you reckon, from a neutral standpoint that I know that you occupy, does this decision strengthen or weaken electoral credibility?
Well, I must sympathize with the Electoral Commission because they were working within the limit set by the electoral law at the time when they set the timetable for the elections. And then people said that it falls squarely within the Ramadan period of next year, and millions of Muslims who will be fasting by that period could be discouraged from going to the polls. Now, it will be very difficult for the Electoral Commission not to listen to that kind of argument. So they got the National Assembly and the President to immediately amend the act and give them a wider latitude. But the downside of it is that the election was brought forward. So since the election was brought forward to January, then the party primaries have to be brought forward to April, and we are in February now. Now that's terrible. But I don't fault the Electoral Commission for that. I don't know that they could have moved the elections forward instead of, because to even elect a president in early January and he will not be inaugurated until May 29th, exactly, it's not very neat as far as I can see.
Okay, Donu, good to see you. Let me ask you this, I mean, something similar. I mean, is it your assessment that this is a technical adjustment or a political calculation? Does this reinforce opposition fears about institutional bias ahead of 2027?
Well, I mean, if Ramadan is the reason given, I think that can be respected. And I think there have been rumors about the election being brought forward for whatever reason for a long time. And I think the opposition should have been prepared for the possibility. In fact, at one point, they even said the election might be in November. So people have had plenty of time to get ready for the possibility of a truncated run-up period.
Right. Okay. Well,
I'm not saying, sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that it is now then ideal that this has happened.
Right.
But I just, well, you know.
Yeah. It's one of those things, isn't it? You've just got to live with it, you know. Okay, let's move on from there, Mahmud Jega. Let's turn to security and the Bauchi alarm, because that's essentially what it is. Governor Bala Mohammed saying over 10,000 bandits have entered Bauchi state, and he held an emergency meeting with President Tinubu today on that, presumably to brief him. I mean, it's a scary movie, except that it's not a movie. At what point does such a thing become a national emergency? I mean,
assuming the figures are correct.
Yeah, I think Ini Ememebong was saying, well, who counted?
Exactly, because you see, even
bandits?
at the peak of the Boko Haram problem, I don't think there ever was a time when 10,000 Boko Haram people, probably 700, maybe 1,000, moved in Borno State.
But it's still alarming, whatever the figure.
Yeah, of course, it's alarming, especially Bauchi is not a border state. So for such an army to be able to arrive in Bauchi, they must have crossed several other states. So definitely, I mean, even an attack by a dozen bandits is a cause for national worry. And since the Americans are here, and it is said that they help with intelligence and surveillance, they should be able, I think, to confirm the figures and show exactly where these bandits are and assist the Air Force to carry out bombing raids. That's the way I see. We are just hearing about the Bauchi episode. The facts have to be confirmed. But if it is true we have international help, it should be possible to immediately locate where they are and also arrange for instant annihilation.
Indeed. And I mean, obviously, it also depends on whatever agreements Nigeria has with the United States. But I mean, how on earth could, assuming that figure that's being bandied around is actually correct, and it came directly from Bala Mohammed because he said it. I mean, everybody saw him say it. How on earth could 10,000 bandits have been allowed to enter and settle in Bauchi state? Is this an intelligence failure, political exaggeration, or evidence of a system under massive strain?
Well, Nigerians are fond of wild approximations. I mean, it's like whenever they say there's going to be a 1,000,000-man march, you can be sure there'll be about 300 people. So I'm sorry, I don't want to trivialize such a serious problem, but I would question how anyone would know 10,000. 10,000 is such a neat figure. It's like you have to walk 10,000 steps a day. It's too pat. But I'm sure that Bala Mohammed is under terrible pressure from a bunch of hoodlums. And I mean, it's everything. It's a political failure. It's a military failure. It's a disgrace to the nation. And I've said this before, as much as President Trump gets on my nerves on so many other levels, I wish he would just come and help the Nigerian government sort out this mess, because they are clearly unable or unwilling to sort it out themselves.
And I mean, when you think about things like Bala Mohammed and so, I mean, you wonder what on earth they're actually doing there. I mean, not him specifically, but the people who are, fight to be governors, and they give us all these promises. Well, I'm going to do this, insecurity, blah, blah, blah. And then when they get in there, they just throw their hands up. I mean, you could make the argument that, security is still pretty much a federal thing. But what's the point of having, this lot there?
Well, Bala Mohammed, like all governors, is the chief security officer of his state. But that's a very nominal thing. It doesn't mean anything. The police commissioner reports to somebody else, really, at the end of the day. The whole thing it's a title without meaning. So I don't blame them. I blame the core law enforcement personnel.
Right.
The people who control the deployment of troops. And I just don't know, I am just absolutely devastated.
And I mean, Mahmud Jega, that strengthens the call for state police, does it?
Yeah, if it is handled very well, there is almost a national consensus now to have state police, although, of course, there are all kinds of misgivings. But you know what I wanted to say about the figures? People in traumatic situations always tend to exaggerate numbers of attackers. We had many cases, just one, when Sheikh Albani was assassinated in Zaria. The man who was with him in the car when they opened fire, when he came out, he said that 20 attackers were firing from all directions at the vehicle.
But they would have killed themselves.
The police later confirmed that there are only two attackers. So you see, if you are lying in a vehicle and they are firing, you could get the impression they are 100.
Indeed. It's a bit like the 12 men of Hindustan, isn't it? Touching the elephant and trying to figure out. But let me ask you this, and I'll come to you in a minute, Donu. Let's turn to another security-related issue that may get worse as 2027 draws near, and that's the issue of political violence. We saw in Edo State this week the attack on Peter Obi, John Odigio Yegun, and other ADC leaders. How serious is this moment?
It is terrible in the sense that it could be a dress rehearsal for what we are about to enter. The elections have even been brought forward. We are going to have party primaries in 2 months.
So there's greater desperation.
Exactly. So the desperation is likely to increase. And you can imagine, these are not, the parties have not held primaries. It's not a proper campaign or anything. Mr. Obi and the other ADC leaders were paying a visit to Edo State. Who was it? Who sponsored this shooting? It is really very important for the police to immediately apprehend the culprits and identify their sponsors before this thing becomes the norm.
Absolutely. And Donu, do you see this as an isolated incident or part of a broader pattern of intimidation against opposition figures? Are we seeing a sort of dangerous normalization of political violence in Nigeria? Not that that is necessarily new in this country.
It's not new at all. And I don't see it as a wider pattern of intimidation and violence against the opposition. I see it as a wider pattern of intimidation against Peter Obi. There's something about Peter Obi that really rattles the APC people. From that dim-witted governor in Edo to his paymasters.
Although we can't say for sure that this was an APC orchestrated attack.
Rattled.
Let's be clear on that.
I'm not saying he's the one who actually led the attack. I'm saying he was rattled enough to make certain inflammatory and threatening statements. Okay? So there's just something about him that bothers them. And I'm wondering, Fintiri, the governor of Adamawa, decamped today.
Yeah, he just defected to the APC.
That makes it like 31, 32, is it 33 governors who are now in APC. And yet, this one little Peter Obi, who's trudging around trying to sort of raise awareness and offer Nigerians an alternative, is regarded as so threatening. They're always on at him. They're obsessed with him. I have a cousin who's in the APC. Total obsession. That's all they're interested in. They're not trying to kill Atiku or anybody else. It's Peter Obi.
But why do you think that's the case?
Because he has an organic, he has a natural affinity with the people. He doesn't have to bribe, maim, intimidate, or do anything to get people going, way, and cheering. I've been with him in public spaces. I've been quite surprised. He really is genuinely popular. And I suppose if you have to buy popularity and intimidate it out of people or steal it or whatever, fake popularity, then you're going to have a guilty conscience and a profound envy, jealousy problem against somebody to whom it comes naturally.
Yeah, that's a very interesting analysis. But we have to move on because we've got other things here. Let's turn to that PDP court ruling today. I think they've tried to kind of make things kind of simmer down a little, let people not get too excited. But a court affirming the PDP's Ibadan Convention and Turaki leadership. How much stability do you think that brings to that party? Or does it simply shift the internal battles, forward to somewhere else, basically?
Maybe so far it does not really bring much stability because there are, as we know, several contradictory court cases. And this is a throwback, for example, to the June 12th affair, when about 6 high courts in 6 different cities all issued orders. This one saying, NEC that time, don't release the result. This one saying, release it. And I remember at the time we interviewed the former president of the Court of Appeal, Justice Mahmud. He said, why should different high courts give contradictory orders? Why didn't anybody go to the Court of Appeal?
Yes.
And I understand in this case there is a matter lying.
Yes, in the Court of Appeal.
Okay, if there is a matter lying before the Court of Appeal, why did the High Court have to issue
another
judgment?
ruling?
Exactly. Wait, let the Court of Appeal.
Confusing everybody.
Confusing everybody. So we are not yet out of the woods in this matter. Let the Court of Appeal rule, and then whoever disagrees goes to the Supreme Court, and that's when we have a final position. However, I was listening to the PDP National Secretary. What he said is that many people were happy with today's ruling because it aligns, how did you put it? It aligns the
said
law.
It aligns with the law, with the facts.
With the facts, exactly.
Right.
Yeah, because, I think he was right. Most all genuine PDP members are supporters of the Turaki faction. The other group are not really PDP. They are APC moles trying to wreck PDP. I think everybody who observes Nigerian politics can see that. That is why he is correct, that this ruling at least aligns the law with the facts of the situation.
What are your thoughts on that, Donu? And I mean, because what's going to happen now is that we've all sat here making very sort of linear assessments, and then the next thing tomorrow is just going to go out the window.
I mean, I agree with everything Oga Mahmud said. I think, and I'm so ashamed of the role played by Nyesom Wike in the destruction of the PDP. I say ashamed because for some reason I regard him as a kind of brother. We're from the same place and I've known him since we were both young. And this is not the way I would have liked to see his career ending or the direction he's gone in. I know that he was treated painfully in 2022 when he failed to get the PDP nomination. I know he has what he regards as a legitimate grievance against Atiku. But I just don't think it's honorable to destroy your own team just because they wouldn't make you the captain. You know, it just goes against everything I personally believe in. And I think what has happened is that a cancer has been injected into the PDP, and I'm not quite sure that it has finished working its way through the body politic. It's so unfortunate. And it's really, really sad. But I hope that people like Ubon, very impressive young man, I hope they're able to cast off this terrible trauma that has been inflicted on them by a disgruntled party member and rescue their party. I mean, the PDP was the greatest party in Africa at one point. It had its own faults. It was in some ways just as bad in its own day as APC is today. Ruling parties in this country never behave well anyway. But I still would like to see multi-party democracy.
Yeah, good point. Now, let's move on, because this week, Mahmud, we also saw a change of leadership of the police, with Kayode Ebetokun out and Tunji Disu in. Is this a genuine reform moment or just a change of faces?
It was so sudden, and the presidency never gave an explanation to the public as to why that change was necessary, because Ebetokun was supposed to have retired, having attained the age of 60 years, but he was given, I think, a four-year mandate to serve as.
They changed the law, basically.
The law was basically changed to accommodate that. And then in the middle of it, he was suddenly removed. And what was announced was that he is resigning for some personal reasons. Now, that's not good enough. To remove the top policeman in the country, you should better tell us what happened. If he did something wrong, let us hear about it and have it in our minds so that the next person does not do the same thing. Otherwise, of course, the appointment of Assistant Inspector General Disu as the acting IGP has now led here to the retirement of all the DIGs and all the AIGs that were senior to him, 28 of them according to her. That's not a very good thing, because in the middle of the security problem that we have now, you actually
need all those people.
Exactly, you decapitate the police. Although it has been the tradition since 1999 to appoint AIGs as IGs. I think only 1 or 2 DIGs ever became IG. All the others were AIGs, and that necessitated mass retirement. But I don't think it is a good tradition, especially in the middle of the security crisis that we have now, to decapitate the police.
And Donu, I wonder if you're realistically expecting any change in policing and security as a result of this shift in leadership at the top of the police force.
Well, from all accounts, is it Tunji or
Tunji
Tunde? Is a jolly good fellow who salutes to his mother when he achieves a success. You know, women, we like that kind of thing. So I have absolutely no problem with him. I hear he's perfectly capable of doing an excellent job, but the system often sabotages people who have potential. A man who could have been an excellent chief of police in Ireland or France or wherever, here is bogged down in corruption and all political considerations that are highly dishonorable. And so it would be interesting to see if he can shake all that off and still do a good job. And of course, then there's the issue of funding. They simply don't get enough money. After I was released by kidnappers,
yes, I remember that sordid, period.
Yes, I had two police very kindly provided with armed police for a while because I was so frightened.
Yeah.
And I said I was never going back to Port Harcourt. Anyway, long story short, perhaps I didn't deserve it, but I was given 2 armed police for a while. And they were telling me how much they earned. I mean, I remember one of them who was quite high ranking, middle of the road rank, was earning 47,000 naira a month. And you're expected to risk your life and protect some silly woman and less silly people for that kind of money. They don't get enough money. Their barracks are a disgrace. Their living conditions are abysmal. So I just don't know how. The British call it making a silk purse out of a sow's ear. I don't know how anybody is going to turn the Nigerian police force into a great force, given the ramifications and the undercurrents and the realities of the financing and the political people you have to answer to. I mean, can this turn around really to Tinubu in next January and say, no, I'm not going to help you rig this election? Sorry, babes, it's not happening. Can he really say that? Because in foreign countries, you can.
Yeah, that would be an interesting development, wouldn't it? We've literally got a minute left, Mahmud. When you look at the big picture and the state of the nation, and you connect all the dots, election timing, insecurity, political violence, legal battles, change at the top of the police, is Nigeria stabilizing or drifting?
The situation is certainly worrisome, and obviously moving towards, as election approaches, instability comes in. I mean, even under normal circumstances. But when you have all kinds of economic and social and security problems, and there are all kinds of shenanigans in politics, then it really creates a combustible situation. But I must be optimistic that things can be corrected in good time to prevent a combustion.
Okay. On that note, I want to thank you very much indeed. Mahmud Jega is a Rise News analyst, former chairman of the editorial board of Daily Trust newspaper. And Donu Kogbara is an international multimedia journalist, former BBC correspondent, currently has a column in Vanguard newspaper, is the star of a YouTube channel called Donu's World, co-presents a podcast called Africa Here and Now, and writes for the Europe-based magazine Africa Report. Thank you very much indeed to both of you. That's it for this edition of Arise Prime Time. Join us again next week. From me and the entire team here in Abuja, bye-bye, and thank you for watching.